Hey, what's going on, guys? Chemistry here. I am back with part 3 of the dubstep tutorial series thing I was doing about 2 weeks ago. I am getting back into my regular uploading schedule, which is about 1 or 2 videos per week. That's usually what I go for. But I will be making up for the fact that I haven't been uploading with this nice long 1 hour-ish special. I guess we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so what we'll be going through in this tutorial, there will be annotations to kind of show you what I'm talking about in certain things at certain times, but the main two topics are song structure with dubstep, of course, and the bass drop, which is the fun stuff. So stay tuned for that. That'll be around the end-ish, but like I said, annotations, make sure they're on. And yeah, so let's get to it. So I made this nice graph here on MS Paint. It is kind of demonstrating visually the song structure and intensity for dubstep, and I also put the sections in each song. But yeah, I guess I'll kind of go through it. The bottom line here, or let's say the x-axis, is the length in minutes. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should probably be 6 minutes because it's kind of dragging on there. But yeah, this is all just a rough estimation. And the left kind of y-axis bar here is the intensity of the song in percentage. As you can see, it's kind of building up and then comes back like this. And I like kind of looking at this because it does kind of give you a rough idea of how the song progresses. So yeah, I guess the basic song structure for any song goes like this, usually like this, right? I kind of broke it down, but this is more for dubstep, obviously, and a lot of dance music, you know, hands up and stuff like that, house. And some trance has a similar song structure. Now, obviously, all song structures are very well structured and organized, and they're organized with things we call bars or measures. One bar or one measure is this right here. As you can see on the very top, it says 13, 14, 15. 13 to the right before 14 here, that's one bar, okay? And you can also see how the colors change at each 4 bars, which also kind of demonstrates that it's in multiples of 4 usually. And the graph is also in timing of 4/4 because most songs don't really fret too much on the time signature itself, because almost all electronic music is in 4/4. So anyway, we'll take a look at this graph again. Kind of go through it. So the first part is the intro to most songs, which is usually just a beat. You can see the intensity is at 25%, so it's not really too crazy right now. It's kind of like right here, and it kind of goes on for 20 seconds ish, right? Rough estimate, like I said, but we won't really talk too much about seconds. We're going to talk more about bars, right? Because that's how they're structured. So I would say the intro for most of the dubstep songs, if the tempo, of course, is over 100, in which case for us it is 130, I'd say it's about 16 bars, right? There will probably be a transition at the end of the 8 bars just to kind of keep things interesting, but the overall intro section is about 16 bars, alright? As you can see, it's kind of building up a bit very quickly and then goes into this kind of higher or more intense area, which is about 50% intensity. That might be a little too much, but it's fine. That is the hook or the build, and it's usually about the same thing. One thing leads to another. So basically what's going on here, the intro breaks, okay, and then it goes into what we call the hook, and that's usually just kind of like, well, it can be the chorus if you have vocals. It'd be like the chorus But if you don't have vocals, it kind of be the catchy kind of catch part of the song that would repeat itself at some point again. So and then from there, from the hook, it starts to build up. Now the way you build your song, like the build up, that can last a various amount of time, but I've noticed a lot in dubstep the build itself can be as short as 2 bars. So I could write that here, 2 bars, right? And the hook itself, or the chorus, can be from 16 bars to 32. And the reason why it's 32 bars is because, well, 16 times 2 equals 32, and that's basically the knowledge to it. Let's say you have a hook that lasts 16 bars. If you, for some reason, wanted it to be any longer, if you wanted a very specific structure to your song, you would have to go to the 32 bars. And the reason why is because it generally wouldn't sound natural and well structured if your song lasted, or I'm sorry, your hook lasted, let's say 20 bars, because that just really wouldn't make much sense. If you wanted your hook to be any longer than 16 bars, typically you would have to multiply it by 2, which is 32. And let's say your hook was 32 bars, and for some reason you want it to be any longer, you would typically want to do times 2, which is 64 bars. But that's highly unlikely in dubstep, so we'll just forget about that. Alright, so then I guess I'll change colors. Then we end up around this section here, which is the climax of the song, at least the first one, which is what we call, the drop in dubstep. You can see it's at 75% intensity, so it is pretty intense, and it does kind of get a little bit higher around the end. All of this can last, again, from 16 to 32 bars. A lot of the times it's 32 bars, and sometimes it's 64, but typically if you're going to have anything that's 64, especially if it's a drop, it'd be around the end, which is over here. So we'll just say it's 32 bars for the climax, right? So from there, it breaks down again. As you can see, it's just kind of breaking down pretty quickly, and that's the breakdown, and it goes back into the hook, which I guess I could color that in red so that we're all color coded. Alright, so we're back into the hook. Now you can change the length of the hook. Just because you're repeating the hook doesn't mean it has to be 16 bars or 32 bars, because last time it was. The hook itself can be just 8 bars if you wanted to go right back into the build or the climax. Generally it would be around 16 to 32 bars again, but it just kind of depends on the feel of the song and how you want the song to kind of turn out. But yeah, that's just kind of a rough estimate. We'll say 16 to 32 bars, not 25 bars, not anything in between, but 16 or 32 bars. So I guess my little dash there might not be so accurate. Anyway, so of course that's the hook, and then it goes into the build. Now as you can see, the build is a little bit longer than the first one, and it doesn't have to be, but typically it can be if you wanted it to. So it does build in for a bit longer. We can say that's 4 to 8 bars. Now we haven't really used 4 to 8 bars before so far, right? And you might be kind of confused to why I'm using 4 to 8, and well, I guess this is kind of how it works, alright? The shortest possible section to a song theoretically would be 1 bar, okay? And I'll just write bar this once. I'm just using these lines here, and this is actually very weird. So 1 bar, okay? If you want it to be any longer, you'd have to do times 2. And 1 times 2 equals 2. So if you wanted your section to be any longer, you do times 2, and that equals 2 bars. Now I'm going to stop writing bars because I'm going to go crazy. I'm just going to write the numbers. Now if you wanted the section, no matter what section it is, to be any longer, you would just do times 2, and that would be 4 bars, right? Because 2 times 2 equals 4. Now if you want it to be any longer than 4 bars, because 4 bars is a very, very short section, no matter what it is. Why am I writing that? 4 times 2 equals 8, right? So that'd be 8 bar section now. Now let's say your 8 bar section still isn't quite long enough. You want it to be any longer, you just have to do times 2, which is 16, which is what we've been kind of looking at for the majority of this graph so far. So that's 16. If you wanted your section of that song, let's say if it was the drop, the bass drop, if you wanted that bass drop to be any longer, let's say you're just not kind of satisfied with a 16 bar drop, then you just do times 2, and that would be 32 bars. And it's really all that simple, and then so forth. They would just keep kind of going like that. Alright, so back to the actual graph here. I don't think we're quite done with this. The colors kind of changed a little bit. I think that's because it's a picture now, and I kind of saved it how it was and not kind of going back on it. But as you can see, it's leaving the hook, and it's going right back to drop number 2. And that should be blue, shouldn't it? So it's the second drop. Now, as you can see, the second drop is a little bit longer, and it's more intense than the first one. It's 100% intensity, which generally just means it's the most intense part of the song. Now, knowing that it is the most intense part of the song and it lasts longer, if the first drop only lasted 32 bars, if this one lasts any longer, then we know we have to do times 2, and this drop would be 64 bars. Now, like I said, the entire thing may differ, but 64 bars is quite a lot, and there's this entire kind of resolution area here, which we're going to talk about right now. And the resolution is kind of the part of the song where everything kind of breaks down a bit. You know, things start to fade out. The beat isn't quite as intense. I don't know. Generally, just things kind of breaking apart and preparing for the break, and then the outro. So that resolution, okay, that resolution is within the 64 bars. So the resolution itself could be, I don't know, 8 bars. Let's say 8 bars. It could be 16, 8 to 16 bars, and that would be within the actual 64 bars, right? Which would, in consequence, make the actual climax itself a little bit shorter. But the resolution is a lot like the climax. It's just that it's fading out. So I hope you guys kind of understand that. And then it's just the outro, and that lasts the same amount of time as the intro, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but it's basically the exact same thing as the intro, just a little less intense. So that pretty much explains it visually. Now I'm going to get into this with FL Studio, which is pretty much everything we've been talking about, but in action, real time. Alright, so take a look at this this kind of sequence here. You can see that the kick is beating on each 4 steps. Alright, now we know that the tempo is at 130. If it's beating on each 4 steps, which is beating on each beat, that means that it's beating at 100, or shall I say, it is going to beat 130 times in 60 seconds, which is obviously a minute. Now, if we put that down onto the playlist, it just beated for 1 bar. So 1 bar equals to 4 beats. Okay, so if I have another one down, so times 2, another one, it's going to beat 8 times in 2 bars. So each 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to count as one entire bar. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I just said 1, 2, 3, 4 twice, right? So if I want that to be any longer, I would have to do ×2, which is basically just copy pasting it and putting it beside. And now we got a 4-bar section, and then we could have an 8-bar section just by doing that. Just outlining, Control-C, Control-V, and then just taking it and dragging it aside. Now what I created here is an entire beat section for 16 bars. As you can see, it's going from bar 1 to bar 16. It's easier to see at the very beginning of the song, but you'll notice that later on it's actually going to look a little bit different because it's going to be from bar 33 to like bar 49, you know what I mean? So it's going to be a little bit different, but that section itself will be 16 bars, because you can see it's going from a lighter gray to a darker gray here in the background, lighter gray, darker gray, and as you can see, that forms kind of 4 times 4, right? Anyway, I hope I'm making sense. It's kind of hard to explain it all, but it's just kind of to know that each song is separated by sections, and those sections are organized according to a certain amount of bars. And like each section in your song can be 16 bars if you wanted it to. Like, it doesn't really matter, but you know, it just kind of it does depend so much on like the entire feel of your song. So I guess I'm just kind of trying to go through as much as I can, so that everybody understands this. And also another thing that's very important to remember is this structure changes from genre to genre and from tempo to tempo. If I was to be at 80 beats per minute tempo, I would typically not have 16 bars quite as much. I'd have 8 bars more often, because 80 beats per minute is quite slow, and if you had a 16 bar section or segment at a tempo of 80 beats per minute, then that will be pretty long. That will feel like a long time. So then you just divide it by 2. But since we are on 130 beats per minute, which is a pretty average tempo, we're gonna use 16 bars because it's gonna be faster. Anyway, moving right along. We're going to use the entire beat we had in the last few tutorials. The FLP, FL Studio Project file, will be up for downloads. I will add a few samples here to the beat and enhance it a bit. If you don't have the samples, replace it with your own. You know what they sound like, so that we don't all sound the same. Okay, so that's our entire beat. It lasts for 2 bars, and if you put what's that, 8, if you put 8 2-bar loops, then you get a 16-bar section. Now within this section we're going to have a short kind of transition at the 8th bar, and the reason why it's at the 8th bar is because it's right, oh shit, it's right in between the beginning of that section and the ending of that section. So for example, if I split the beat by pattern, and to do that you just gotta right click here and split by channel, and now the entire beat will be split into different patterns. So the kick will be pattern 1, hi-hat's pattern 2, that one hi-hat pattern 3, and snares pattern 4. If you put the kicks up here, the hi-hats here, and just kind of separate them like this, that way you can kind of build it in. So I guess what we'll do is we're going to make a quick transition here. So I'm going to remove the kicks, and I think that'll be good. Alright, so it's kind of hard to tell now, but if we add, let's say, a crash cymbal or something like that, maybe a sweep effect or something. I know that's a little dancey, but it doesn't really matter. Then it'll be kind of easier to tell. We could have a reverse crash, anything that really suits the mood. And then kind of comes back. Now, of course, all we have here are percussion instruments, and things will progress every 8 bars. The reason why it's every 8 bars is because our section is 16 measures long, 16 bars long, and 8 bars is in the middle of that. We added the reverse crash and everything, and the crash here, so that kind of signifies that the song itself should progress every 8 bars. In other words, there will be a transition on every 8 bars. Alright, so what we have here is our intro. Now obviously we don't really have much for bass or anything like that, or pads. You can have something pretty ambient with dubstep. I heard some that were pretty soft. You can make pads with just about any plugin. This is about Albino 3. If you have Nexus, then the Nexus pads are really nice. I hate having to use too many plugins, getting you guys to download plugins or buy them or whatever you like, I guess. But I think you guys should know that just because I'm using Albino for the pads doesn't mean like it's the only plugin that'll work. Pads are actually quite easy to make, and if you guys are really wondering how to make them, I can probably make a tutorial on that. So alright, so this is the super pad category for some of you that have Albino 3. And I quite like this sound here. So yeah, we'll start making the intro. And what you normally do with pads is typically, if they're quite thin, and they should be for dubstep, is you would have one bottom note, which is the root note of the key of the song. Typically, it wouldn't be very low, since we want to sound thinner. So we'll just use C5, and then you would kind of experiment on the minor chords, because most dubstep is used in minor. So let's say the minor third is D sharp, so the intervals sound like this. You can actually just keep that if you like it. You can keep on experimenting. Perfect fourth is F. It's going to sound major without any other note. Let's say we had G, that's perfect fifth. It's going to sound a little more major, but it doesn't really signify anything of the song, because you can still kind of add to it that will make it obvious that it is in minor. Now that is one of the Albino pads I like. If you guys do have Nexus, I know a lot of you do, you can use under the Epic pads, I think it's Andromeda? Yeah. If you want more pads, I'd say get some Trance Element expansion packs or Trance Pad expansions, quite good. Nexus has some really luscious pads, so go for that. I'd say put it up a little bit higher. As for EQ goes, typically you would just cut off some of the low end, maybe boost up the highs a little bit. Just do that quick. And you just kind of put that underneath the beat. Now, if you don't add anything after that transition, it will sound kind of wrong, and I can almost hear like a bass shouting. So I'm going to add a sub bass, and you usually just use all sine oscillators or all triangle oscillators, and it's just this low kind of oomph sound. And you can just do that on 3x OSC, it doesn't really matter. So we could kind of do that now. Not too low, so it's like you can barely hear it, but C4-ish. Doesn't really require too much EQing, maybe some stereo shaping. I wouldn't really do it on the bass though, if you're planning on playing this at a club. Wait, actually that shouldn't actually be there. That should be on the second part of the, or the second 8 bars of that intro. Now, if you like using a wobble bass underneath that, I know it's not really sounding too much like dubstep so far, but if you do want to do something like that, then you know, if that's your style, then do that. If you want to add some vocals here, then that's fine, because I mean, I would just add little samples because this is just the intro. Most of the vocals belong at the next 16 bars, which is the hook / build. Also, what I like to do is I would like to kind of change this beat here. I like to add some rides and stuff to kind of enhance it. So rides are typical, kind of sounds like that, you know what I mean, on a drum set. But I can use that as a bit of a open hi-hat kind of sound. And I'm going to use VAC2 here. If you guys don't have it, like I said, just replace it with whatever you have. And I like using that underneath my kick. So the kick is here, and this is the closed hi-hats. Open hi-hats, can move that down a bit. Snares here, and then we got the ride. Alright, and the ride is only gonna hit once at the end. It's gonna sound like this. Alright, it's only gonna make kind of that offbeat hit. I might have to turn that up and EQ it later, but it's all good. So yes, we should change those hi-hats as well. I'm going to run them all the way through like this, so they're hitting each step. And I'm going to replace the hi-hats with the exact same sound we had for that ambient sound, if you guys can remember. It was that. Same exact sound. So it'll kind of be smoother, in my opinion. Alright, so same idea here. We're transitioning to the next section, so you gotta have your effects or whatever to help you out with that transition. If you want to take out a few instruments, that's probably a good idea too. I normally take out the kick. Probably leave the bass, depending. I usually take it out or fade it out. I would fade it just using the volume knob here. See that volume knob? Or if it's linked to the mixer, which I should probably do, link that to the mixer, and then you can see this is the fader here. Right click on the fader, create automation clip. If you don't outline any part of the playlist, it'll just stretch out for the entire song. And then as you can see here, you can add dots, and then that will just fade out on the volume. You can move the tension like this, and experiment with that. I would put it back up when you're done fading it out, because we are going to need it in the next section. So that's 80% and that's 80%. All right. All right, well, the crash isn't quite loud enough, but yeah, it's basically, I guess, how it would sound. All right, so what you do is copy paste that into the next section. Now this section here is the hook / build. I'm going to try to kind of not waste so much time. But what you normally do is you change the chord progression here. So right now we're just droning on that same chord. What you normally do is you would actually change the chord a little bit. So maybe you can go into a full progression, which is normally about 4 notes, or you can just kind of go down a bit or up or whatever. So minor C, you could just get an A, or yeah, A flat. And then we could even cut that in half and then move it down to G to make it all harmonic and stuff. And then in the end, it'll sound like this. I just mess up the pattern. It's fine, I can just cut that off and then loop it. And right here I can just bring it back to the full length. There we go. I'm also going to need that bass to do the same thing, so we're going to go down to A flat and lower it even lower to G. And now it's going to do that same exact thing where I kind of messed up the pattern. It's fine, I can just cut it, loop it over, and use the entire length for when we need it. Alright, yeah, so that section here is the hook. It still has the transition going from 24 to 25, which is the 8-bar kind of split in the middle, and that same transition here. This section here would be the build, or at least the beginning of it. I would say use sound effects and stuff to help you out, like sweeps and maybe even samples if you have them. I do have videos on how to make a simple sweep using ReFx OSC. So what you do is you take the oscillators on ReFx OSC and you just use the fuzzy kind of zigzags, and you get that. Add filters to them. Anyway, I have videos on how to do that, so you guys can watch that. So now, without wasting any more time, hopefully, we're going to make that kind of quick build, which is going to be the kick roll, actually. So this is very typical. I've heard it many times, and it's usually only about 2 bars. It's this kind of kick roll where you bring the kick into the step sequencer, or I mean the piano roll, but you can use it in the step sequencer if you want. Put it each second step like this, right, and you get this kind of, and then just throw it all along on each step. That's pretty much it. So removing the original kick and replacing that with the kick roll, you might want to kind of turn it down a bit. Maybe you want to kind of, oh, you guys can't see this. Maybe you kind of want to turn it down a bit, or kind of roll it up, whatever you like. But it does depend on the situation, I guess. And then on bar 33, after 32 bars of our song so far, we are going to hit into the bass drop, which is the next part of this tutorial. So welcome to the next part of the tutorial, which is the bass drop. So typically there are definitely more things going on and more chorus, vocals, stuff like that. Sound effects, I just didn't really kind of get into them so much, and the reason why is because this tutorial would be way longer than it should be. I just kind of want to get into the actual structure of the song, and I hope I explain that as well as possible. You can apply this structure to just about anything, and there's a lot of templates out there for dubstep that will kind of get you within that structure, so you don't have to kind of be so kind of left off without any help, if you will. So good for the handicapped. Definitely try that if you can find any. Search up, I don't know, dubstep templates for FL Studio 10, something like that, and you should find it. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums up the first part. Alright, so now it's time for part 2 of this nice special, which is the bass drop. First, I'd like to say that we're going to have to be splitting all the patterns separately, all the channels. We're going to have like 10 harmlesses, we're going to have like 10 massives channels and all this different stuff. And we do that because we want to be able to go back and use as many patterns as we can, and be able to be very flexible, because we don't want everything to be bundled up into one pattern or one mixer channel or one just channel, because that'll be harder to work with once we want to add variation. You know, you don't want to just keep on looping the same small 4-bar thing that you had with your basses, and just that doesn't normally work. You want to be diverse with your basses and your synths, and I'm going to try to do my best to make bass drop for you guys. I do realize I have to use massive because of the lack of excruciating noise that comes out of Harmless. I will be using lots of Harmless though, because I know most of you would want to learn from that, because you don't have to buy anything and that sort of stuff. It comes with FL. But a lot of the loud synths are made in Harmless, mostly because of the oscillators. You have so many different shapes, and Harmless does have custom options, but didn't figure that out. That didn't really make much sense to me. I tried to, but didn't really work out. So most of the basses will be used by Harmless. Most of the synths, the loud stuff, will be massive. So I do apologize in advance. But yeah, I do have something already kind of pre-prepared for this drop. So I guess we'll just get right into it. So oscillator 1, modern talking, alright? By the way, don't just do everything I say. You know, I'm not the gospel. Just this is just suggestion, really. So it'll sound like that. I like taking the wave table position to the other end. Sounds a little different, more appropriate. Turn on oscillator 2. Use Chrome, alright, under digital hybrid. Okay, wave table position all the way to the other end too. You could put it around the middle. Experiment with that. Slightly different noise. And the last one, I use bronze. Keep the wave position where it is. You can change if you want. Like I said, don't just copy me and leave it at that. So you get that kind of sound. And you want to pitch these down to -12, and that's just the lower octave. So it just sounds a little bit lower. But yeah, so that's the raw sound. And I want to make something that's just generally able to be droned and still sound nice. I don't know, doesn't really make much sense, but anyway. So anyway, just turn up this thing to filter 1, because I think we'll only be using filter 1. So you want to turn on filter 1 if it isn't already. This is the filters. We're just routing all the oscillators so they go to the filter we want. If you have a filter 2, then you'll have to push that back, or maybe in the middle if you want to use both, but you're just kind of routing it to a certain filter. I also turned that all the way up. Don't really think it does anything, but that's what I did. And you want to use Scream on filter 1. Like I said, don't just copy me. You can for now, but like, you know, try to use other filters and things like that. Trying to give you suggestions on other things to change. So as you can see, it kind of lost most of its noise. So you want to turn on that, or turn up the cutoff a little bit. I turn up the scream and turn down the resonance a little bit. That's what I found sounded nice. Alright, okay. I think we're doing pretty good so far. As for effects, I usually just add a classic tube. It's kind of like, I think it's just kind of like distortion. Want to make it nice and rough. If you want, you can add some EQ, turn that on. You just boost up the high shelf a little bit in the frequency. Alrighty. Now you can add some white noise. I know you can not really see it, but you just turn up the amp a little bit, just I'd say 9 o'clock, something like that if you want, or bright noise, whatever you like. And you can also add some bit crusher, turn on insert 1. I also know you can't see that either, but the dry wet would stay around where it is, and the crush would just, you'd probably turn that up to around like 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, something like that. Alright, so the last thing for this I think we're going to do is we can change the voicing under the voicing tab. When it says unisono, which I guess is just unison, you can move that up as many times as you want. It's just kind of layering the exact same noise over each other. I did it 4 times, so it just sounds wider. And I also put it to monophone and legato, so that creates that effect, but not really needed. That's just what it does. And yeah, so I don't think we're gonna wobble that. That's gonna be like our loud synth that will start things off, because you want to kind of start off with a bit of an explosion. That's how I like to look at it. You have this explosion, and then things just kind of go crazy. I think what we will do, we're going to have a 1 measure little pause thing happen here. So for 1 measure, there's just going to be silence. I think I'll move the crash over to here. So the drop is really going to start on measure 34. Everything is just going to be pushed down to the side by 1 measure. Don't really think of it too much. It's just that kind of 1 measure silence. And that would be the drop. You do want to get your drum instrument, so throw that on there. So leave that 1 measure blank. Oh, we got some vocals. I think what we should do is add another kind of impact sound. Anything really works, just experiment with that. Alright, so that will initiate the drop. Alright, okay, so we're gonna go to massive. We're gonna call that scream. Not really sure why, but we're just gonna drone it on C5. And the reason why it's on C5 is because our song was on C, or in C, as you can see, the first one here. If it was an A, then we'd just drone it on A, but in this case it's not. Right, what's going on here? There it is. Alright, so we're just going to have this nice long noise. Now you can start it off with bass, whatever you like, but I find that this is much louder. Alright, so that's all we really got so far. You can link that to the mixer if you want, and EQ and stuff like that, maybe add some distortion. But I think we're going to move on, or else this will take too long. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to kind of make that smaller so you guys can see it. We're going to clone this massive channel. It's going to be called Scream 2, but we'll make it wobble. Alright, so under the LFO 5 LFO, doesn't really matter which one you use. We want it to be a sine kind of filter effect. and you can move it like this, and if you make it so that the entire duck or kind of valley here is right in the middle, that'll make it so that it's a full wobble every time, and I find it sounds better that way. And if you want to sync with your song, just hit sync, and then you can change this bottom kind of note of fraction to get faster or even slower wobble. What you want to do is you want to throw that little arrow pointing in every direction, click hold that, throw it underneath the cutoff knob here in our filter 1. If you had filter 2, then you could throw it on there. You could throw it on the resonance if you wanted to, the scream, doesn't really matter. You can basically link it to just about anything. And then holding the 5, you can drag that down or up, and you'll see it creates this thing, and that's how you get your wobble. Alright, you can turn it up a bit. I think I might. And yeah, I'm gonna change that to always. So yeah, sounds alright. Okay, so I'm gonna make another pattern. I'm gonna go to pattern 12 and make this. And I'm gonna have the wobble come back. So I could throw that beside. Yes. Is that alright? That's alright. And now I think I should probably use some Harmless. So let's throw in some Harmless. And I want to create some low bass thing, because I think it's going to lack that if we don't. Maybe some ya ya ya. Yeah, if you run out of ideas, I say just keep on listening to it and just use your imaginations. Just imagination. Use your imagination, and just kind of expect what should kind of come next, because obviously it's kind of hard to tell, but as you can see, what we have so far is 1 measure of just droning and 3/4 of a measure of that part there. So what we're missing is that last quarter of a measure, and we're going to replace that with our bass. We kind of need some bass in there. You can add some sound effects. To do that, you could just maybe get some samples. And you put that on the last quarter measure. So you kind of understand it, there's never silence unless you want it to be silenced. Kind of understand? So even though it's all in different patterns, you got to make sure, you got to kind of pretend that it's all going to be filling out each hole. And if you ever have holes, you have to remember that it's because you wanted it to be there, or you wanted, or you intended it to be there. So here's our Harmless. Again, let's throw the detune down to -24. Probably turn down the frequency and the amount and the release, just turn that off. And we want it to wobble, so like moving the phase there. And then the speed, probably just 1, right? Could use hybrid low pass. You can also change the LFO actual like shape, like triangle. Sounds a little different. Pulse. Right, so experiment with that. Also, this right here, the tremolo can make it kind of pad through or pan through each ear, kind of. I don't know if you guys kind of hear that, but it is kind of nice. So add a little bit of that. Throw that in there. And I know that if you want to kind of get it to sound like it's almost talking, you need that resonance turned up. and I found that turning this either way can get you different sounds as well. Alright, and yeah, I think this kind of changes the amount of the sine wave, how much it ducks and how much it comes back up. Yeah, so just kind of mess around with that. But to really get that yeah kind of talking sound, you need that decimator, which is what we looked at last tutorial. So you can open up Ohmicide or Bit Crusher. If you guys downloaded that, it was free. I can leave in the description if you want. But you do need the decimator, so first band will be decimator, and you can change what type it is, doesn't really matter. And I think we'll change band 2 to Bit Crush. There it is. Sorry about that. Just kind of having fun now. But yeah, I think that pretty much does it for now anyway. I will EQ this because I feel like it's too much bass. I'll just move that up a bit. As for the actual mixing and balancing, make sure that it does not go higher than 0 decibels. As long as it's under 0 decibels, I think you guys can make the decision of how loud it should actually be. As well as the distortion. The distortion can mess things up with the decibel meter, so be careful with that. If you find that it's really loud and it's only coming out as like -5, then it's usually because of the distortion, and vice versa. If it's like really loud and it's not really coming out as that loud, I think the only way you can really fix that is by ear, but better yet, just kind of using a different distortion method. Right, so we got to fill out the empty spot here, which is that 1/4 measure. Just put it there. Put it higher, no matter. Doesn't really matter what it is. Alright, so that has to be a little bit louder. Alright, are we getting full wobble? That's kind of my question right now. Because I don't want it to sound off. Alright, so this is always the part that kind of confuses me, is how to kind of keep going from what we just did. If you do run out of ideas, you can just go into like your Scream channel or even the master channel if you don't really have drums or anything, and you can open up something like Glitch or Gross Beat. Gross Beat actually comes with FL Studio, so you usually get your hands on, and you can just kind of mess around with the different sequences, and it'll really mess up your sound, but kind of in a good way. And as you can see, it's perfectly structured within like the measures and everything, so it can kind of give you like a few ideas of how to proceed. So I'm gonna play this. It's gonna mess around. It's gonna mess around with that Scream massive thing we were just doing. basically just try stuff out, experiment. It's good for ideas. So I think that's kind of cool. To implement it though into your track, what I normally do is I pick one, like let's say I wanted this one, just kind of leave it on Chaos 5, and then create an automation clip on the mute knob, or the mute button, right, which is right here. Just right click on it, create automation clip, and when you want it, right now it's now you can see it's muted because the line's at the bottom, but if you want to unmute and be there, you just do this, right? And whenever you want to come back in, you just kind of put it in like this, and you just kind of unmute it by having it on the very top of the envelope. So that's kind of how it works. Alright, so I guess we'll just keep going. Maybe we can do something a little bit faster, more harmless. Yes, we'll do more harmless. Okay. Maybe we can have like a different kind of scream coming on each on beat, and have more of this sound, because we didn't really hear too much of it. Okay, so I'll clone that exact same thing, just harmless number 3, and I'm gonna make that mess around with the speed LFO here. Yeah, okay, we'll use that. We'll drone that for full measure. Excuse me. And then we can have that kind of on-beat scream thing going on, which we could use harmless for. We could. We'll use a completely different harmless, like from scratch. So we'll throw that in, detune it, take off the release, and the mount, and the frequency, invert the phase, no LFO because we just want to scream. Yeah. So I'm just going to turn out the frequency and the resonance, maybe mess around with these two knobs here. Add a little distortion. Alright, good enough. So what you would do is you put that on each on beat, and it'll kind of replace the scream we kind of had at the beginning. Because you don't want that droning scream every time, that's just kind of initiating the drop. So you can kind of hear that the LFO is going to say yeah right on the offbeat. And if I had the on beat here, this is the on beat. Have that lower. Want to add some distortion? I think we should do that. Good enough. something to finish off that fourth measure, because this is 3 measures here, and we're going to need something to kind of initiate or kind of build up to the next 4 measures. All right, because it's kind of gonna progress that way. So new pattern. Maybe we can do something with that. Never get enough of that sound. Wow. Alright, that's cool. I like that. Alrighty. So you know it's a good sign when your computer starts to lag. It's always good. So I'm going to drone that. Alright, that did not come out the way I wanted it to. Yeah, I want it to come out like that. Alright, so that's 4 measures, as you can see in red. You can have another explosion, or you can do it on the 8th measure, it doesn't really matter. Some people do it that way. A lot of people do it on the 8th measure. Depends how you like your drop to progress. We can have more low bass if you want. I'm trying to keep the step sequencer to a smaller height because I know you guys can't actually see it, but it keeps on going back to its normal size, which is kind of annoying. Stop doing that. We can go back to our old bass, which was that, as we had in the second tutorial. So new pattern. It was like this, wasn't it? It's okay to be a little bit melodic. So we can put that over here because it's not really going to make sense if we do that on the first measure, because the first measure is always the explosion to me. For example, wait, no, I don't have any examples. Well, if you listen to songs like Cinema Remix by Skrillex, the big wah wah, you know, that thing, that would be the explosion to me. A lot of other songs have that kind of big noise on each verse of the grouping, the group measures, which is 4 in this case. The first one would always kind of have that. In my case, that long droning. I mean, we could bring it back, but I think it'd kind of get annoying if I did. No, we need that to be over here. But if you guys aren't actually seeing a bit of a pattern here, everything is 1 measure long. I haven't had anything so far that's lasted 2 measures, like one instrument lasting 2 measures. Everything so far has been 1 measure long or shorter. So that's something to keep in mind. So I kind of want to have this thing back and use it. I need to get in a little bit close. Oh my god, why? There it is. Throw that like 6, was it? That's what we had it before. Yeah, so anything you like. I think you guys kind of realize at this point that I don't really know what I'm doing and I'm just kind of messing around. But if you have structure, that structure will keep you from getting stuck, and it will keep you from sounding unprofessional. So in which case, we should probably just keep on progressing. After each 8 measures, you kind of have to change things up, because most of the time what ends up happening is things get really kind of boring, because it's just kind of repeating the same crap. So I heard a lot of the times after about 8 measures, it progresses into different sounds with slightly more intense of a feel, which can be changing the beat to full timer, you know. Generally having the same structure, just changing the instruments and making things a little bit quicker. Not always, but you know, just something to keep in mind. I think what I'll do, actually, I have an idea. I think what I'll do for the second explosion, I like to call it, on that second scream, and go to the mixer. I am going to use the grow speed. So I'm going to see what would sound good for the second one. I think I might actually just use some of the ones at the bottom, because the ones at the bottom here, the red ones, that will usually just change the volume. So as you can see, it's just going to cut off the volume if it just stays unmuted. Just kind of sounds like that. So you can do stuff like that, so it's kind of cool. And you can mix that in with some of the stuff that we've seen up here with the green kind of DJ scratching effect thing. Alright, so what I'll do, make that unmuted around the end here, so I think I'll just kind of do that. Alright, so that'll work. Okay, see, that's what happens. Okay, so we're gonna have to keep that unmuted at all times, except for that one time where we actually want it to be unmuted. Alright, push that all the way over here. Now the automation clip will make sure that grow speed is muted, but except for right here, which is where we want it. And I think that might sound alright. Oh, have it the wrong place, sorry about that. And then you should probably bring that back. Or I'll move that over here. See what I'm doing here with the whole patterns and mixing it around? That's what I'm talking about. That's why you want your patterns and channels to be separated, so you can kind of move stuff around like this. Okay, I see how it's not really making much sense, because it's ending with that yeah, and then it's going to this. So what we can do is we can make this particular pattern, which is pattern 12, right click on that, we can clone it, so now pattern 3 is the exact same thing as pattern 12, and then we're gonna change that to our old bass, and that should sound okay, hopefully. Got that, should replace that. have to mess around with the LFO again, of course. Change that. And if before your drop you just so happen to use any type of synths like saws and stuff like that, that also can be used in your drop, believe it or not. Doesn't always have to be bass. I know I'm not using many samples or sound effects and stuff like that. Don't forget about them, because those, you need those. I'm not going to waste time making a saw instrument. I'm just going to use something here. Should be just fine, even though that's just so lazy because saws are so easy to make. I think I don't even know which one I'm going to use. Alright, we'll have to beef that up a bit. We're going to take off the reverb and delay. Hopefully this will sound alright. So let's say you had any type of pattern with the saw, or you're trying to remix a song and then you want to kind of bring back that melody. You can, as long as it's in the same key as the rest. That's why we're keeping it in the same key, so C would probably be the first note. Doesn't always have to be, but you can have nice long chords and stuff like that. But typically they're played quite fast. I don't even know what I'm doing right here, to be honest. Oh my god. I'm just gonna stick to trance, guys. I'm gonna stick to trance. Oh my god. I'm just embarrassing myself now. That was horrible, that's fine. You guys get the idea. If you had any type of melody or saw instrument, you can throw that in certain times. It doesn't even have to be at the beginning of each measure. It can be in half time of the measure, like this. Something like that, it doesn't really matter. Now, I think I'm kind of getting to the end of this, because if I go any longer, we're going to run on way too much time. But anyway, point is, it's going to keep on kind of going this way. We're going to have another crash cymbal and things like that here, because that is the end of 8 measures. This is 8 measures, this is 8 measures. And if you want, you can just stop the drop at the end of here and then come back to whatever was your hook. And then keep going. Obviously, I will improve on this in the further tutorials, but I just think I should stop. I should also explain, because some people didn't quite get it when I meant the halftime, full-time stuff with the drum instruments. Right now, our drum pattern is in halftime. So let's say we wanted this part to be in full time. Wouldn't necessarily be, shouldn't be, because the next drop should be in full time. But I'm just going to kind of do it here. Basically, the beat would sound like this. I'm going to make it 8 bars, or 8 steps. So that makes, yeah, whatever, it's fine. It's fine. So the kick would kind of be on each hit, and the snare would be where it would normally be, but you'd have more kicks and stuff. And you'd have the same kind of hat pattern that we had, and have the rides and stuff underneath the kick. Just gonna erase it here and just the hi-hats, and then have those here. So now that beat is full time, which just means that the beat is like kind of looping at 130 instead of whatever 130 divided by 2 is 65, yeah. But yeah, so then you just kind of put that down. Obviously we'd separate it, but just for now we won't. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I think we're gonna have to stop now. Hopefully I've done the best I could have done for this drop. I really think that if we would have waited on this, that the tutorial would have been better, but I already started the series and I haven't uploaded for 2 weeks. Do apologize for that. Most of it was actually insecurity. I didn't want this to happen, this right here, but hopefully just watching me mess around and stuff can help you to mess around and kind of realize what knobs to kind of play around with, and a lot of it just has to do with filters and LFO and stuff like that, and of course your distortion, because that also helps as well. I know some of you were using Massive, so I did feel bad to just not use Massive anymore. For those of you who actually got it, congratulations, because I actually used it a little bit in this. But both synths are very good synthesizers. So, hope you guys enjoy the tutorials. We'll be getting to the remix stuff. So I'm going to take a little break with the dubstep. If I find anything better, if I do anything that I like better, we will keep doing this. Like, we'll probably finish like an entire song eventually at the end of the series, and we'll probably keep improving on the drop. Okay, so hope you enjoy, and I guess I'll see you later.